My brothers and sisters, there comes a time in each of our lives when we must look not outward, but inward, not at the world around us, but at the world within. It is there, in that quiet and often uncomfortable space, that we confront something powerful and dangerous, the ego. It is a silent architect of division, a voice that whispers we are better or worse than others, that we must win every battle, prove every point, and never admit our faults. And if left unchecked, it does not merely damage relationships, it destroys peace, chokes forgiveness, and imprisons the soul. But we were not born to live in such chains. Today, I speak not only of the ego, but of the freedom that comes when we let go of it, of the strength that rises when we no longer need to be right, of the healing that begins when we are brave enough to be humble. Let us walk this path together, not in pride, but in purpose. My brothers and sisters, there is a great misunderstanding in our world, the belief that ego is strength, that to stand tall, one must look down on others, that to lead, one must speak loudest, that to be respected, one must never admit weakness. This is not strength. This is a mask. Ego is the armor we wear when we fear being truly seen. It is the shield we raise not to protect ourselves from harm, but to hide from truth. It convinces us that we must be more than others in order to be enough. But I tell you this, no one becomes more by belittling another. No heart grows by silencing others, and no soul finds peace through pride. When we allow ego to govern our lives, we begin to confuse dominance with dignity. We start to value being right more than being kind. We turn every disagreement into a battlefield, every correction into an insult, and every failure into a personal attack. Ego does not lift us. It weighs us down with fear of being wrong, fear of being judged, fear of not being seen as important. But real strength is not in the mask. It is in the courage to take it off. You see, it takes far more strength to say, "I was mistaken," than to pretend you never err. It takes more wisdom to listen than to shout. And it takes a truly powerful soul to walk away from a fight that ego insists you must win. I have seen many people in high places, with titles and applause, who are prisoners of their own ego. They cannot sleep at night, because their peace depends on the approval of others. They cannot apologize, because they believe it makes them small. But the truth is this: the person who apologizes, who forgives, who admits their weakness, that is the person who is free. You cannot lead a family, a community, or a nation if your ego must always be fed. Because in feeding it, you starve your integrity. You become a servant to image, not a servant to truth. Ego makes us think we are always the hero in the story, never the cause of the hurt. But when we dare to remove that mask, we begin to see ourselves clearly, not to condemn, but to correct. Not to shame, but to grow. And in that moment, when we allow the truth in, we also let love in love for ourselves, and love for others as they truly are, not as our ego demands they be. I say to you, if you want to overcome the anger that burns inside you, if you want to stop the cycle of conflict in your home or your heart, you must first look at the voice that says, asterisk, you are better, asterisk or asterisk, they owe you, asterisk or asterisk, never let them see you hurt, asterisk, that voice is not your strength. It is your fear dressed in arrogance, and so I ask you, when do we become so afraid of being human? Let us remember the strongest tree is not the one that refuses to bend, but the one that bows in the wind and rises again. So too must we bend. We must admit when we are wrong. We must see the value in others not as threats, but as fellow travelers on this road of life. We must strip away the ego that demands supremacy and replace it with a spirit of humility that invites unity. Because when ego falls, truth stands, and in that truth we do not find weakness. We find grace. We find dignity. We find the quiet kind of power that does not need to boast, does not need to control, and does not need to win every argument. A power that seeks peace, not dominance. So do not let ego speak louder than your conscience. Do not let it push away the ones you love. Do not let it blind you to your own faults, or make you forget the humanity of others. For in the end, ego does not build lasting joy, it only builds walls. And no wall has ever made a man truly free. Let us be brave enough to put down the mask. My brothers and sisters, there are wounds we carry that no one can see. They sit beneath our smiles, behind our eyes, and within our hearts. They are the memories of betrayal, the sting of harsh words, the echo of moments we cannot forget. And often we believe we are protecting ourselves by holding on to them. We tell ourselves that if we forgive, we are letting others off too easily. But what we don't realize is that in holding on, it is not others who remain trapped, it is us. Forgiveness is one of the hardest things a person can do. It is not weakness. It is not forgetfulness. It is not pretending the pain never happened. It is the decision to no longer carry the burden of someone else's actions on your back. It is the strength to say, "You will not control my thoughts. You will not live in my heart. You will not shape my future." But before we can forgive others, we must learn to forgive ourselves. So many of us walk around blaming ourselves for past decisions, for mistakes we made when we did not know better, for words we spoke in anger, for moments of fear or failure. And the ego, always loud, reminds us of those moments again and again. It tells us we are unworthy, that we are broken, that we do not deserve peace. And so we stay stuck angry on the outside, ashamed on the inside. But I say this to you now, there is no healing without self-forgiveness. Each of us is a work in progress. Not one of us walks through this life without stumbling. We are all shaped by pain, by pressure, by the complexity of being human, and to carry guilt forever is to deny yourself the right to grow. To forgive yourself is not to excuse the past, it is to free your hands so you can build a better future. And once you have tasted that freedom, once you have looked in the mirror and said, "I forgive you," something changes. Your heart begins to soften, your vision becomes clearer. You no longer see others as threats or enemies. You begin to see their pain too. You understand that those who hurt you were often hurting themselves, that their actions were shaped by fear or pride or ignorance, just as yours have been at times. That understanding does not mean you must allow them back into your life. It does not mean what they did was right. It means that you are choosing peace over poison. You are refusing to let your spirit be weighed down by the chains of resentment. Forgiveness is not an event, it is a process. Some days it comes easily. Other days the memory comes back, and so does the anger. That is when you must remind yourself that forgiveness is not for them, it is for you. It is the path you choose every day, so that bitterness does not take root in your soul. And when you make that choice, slowly, the negative feelings begin to fade. Not because they were never real, but because you no longer feed them. The fire dies when the fuel is gone, and in its place grows compassion for others, yes, but also for yourself. You begin to see that we are all doing the best we can with the pain we've been given and the lessons we've had to learn. Let us be people who carry light, not weight. Let us not allow the past to darken the promise of today. Let us forgive boldly even when it is difficult, especially when it is difficult, because the world is in need of more mercy, more grace, more people who have the courage to say, "This ends with me." And if you ever doubt whether you are capable of such forgiveness, remember this. You were not born with hatred in your heart. It was taught. It was built. But what is built can be undone. And in its place, something greater can grow: peace, patience, humility, strength. So, I ask you today, not as someone who stands above you, but as someone who walks this road with you, forgive. Forgive the one who did not say sorry. Forgive the one who could not love you. Forgive the one who let you down. And yes, forgive yourself, because the one who forgives is the one who is truly free. My brothers and sisters, there is a quiet power in humility, a kind of strength that does not shout, but stands firm like a mountain in the storm. And yet, in our world today, humility is often mistaken for weakness. We are told that to be strong is to be unbending, that to survive we must protect our pride at all costs. But I say this to you, it is pride that breaks us, and it is humility that puts us back together. You see, negative feelings, anger, resentment, jealousy, fear, they do not come from the heart. They are born from the ego, and the ego is loud. It insists we are right. It demands we be seen. It tells us we must never back down. But humility is different. Humility listens. Humility understands. Humility makes room for peace where ego would only allow pain. When someone hurts us, the ego says, strike back. Humility says, breathe. When we fail, the ego says, hide your shame. Humility says, learn. When we are criticized, the ego says, defend at all costs. Humility says, consider what is true. That is how we begin to overcome the negative voices within us, not by pretending they do not exist, but by choosing to respond to them with something gentler, something wiser. I have seen this truth in the lives of people who have endured the deepest wounds, those who have been betrayed, humiliated, even hated, and still they choose not to let bitterness rule them. Why? Because they understand what the ego cannot accept, that healing begins with humility, that to truly rise above your pain, you must first be willing to kneel before it. Let me tell you this, there is no victory in holding on to anger. There is no power in clinging to pride. The real power lies in being able to say, I am hurting, but I will not hurt others in return. I am disappointed, but I will not let bitterness define me. I am afraid, but I will walk forward in courage. That is humility, and that is how we begin to silence the negative feelings that rob us of peace. Humility allows us to face our emotions honestly, not to be ruled by them, but to understand them, to ask, what is this anger trying to teach me? Where does this fear come from? And perhaps most importantly, what is it that my ego is trying to protect? Because often what we call pride is just pain that has not yet been given a name. When you meet yourself with humility, you give yourself the gift of grace. And when you meet others with humility, you give them the gift of understanding. You open a door for reconciliation, for healing, for growth. And suddenly the weight of anger and resentment begins to lift, and in its place comes something lighter, something truer, a sense of calm, a sense of dignity, a sense of being rooted not in pride, but in purpose. I say this to you not as a man who has never felt anger, but as one who has learned to walk through it without letting it consume me. I have known the temptation to harden my heart, but I have also known the freedom that comes when you soften it instead. And I can tell you that freedom is worth far more than the fleeting satisfaction of pride. We must not confuse humility with silence or surrender. Humility does not mean letting others walk over you. It means standing in your truth without needing to shout it. It means knowing your worth so deeply that you do not need to prove it. It means rising above the noise of ego so you can listen, truly listen to yourself, to others, to what the moment is asking of you. And what this moment is asking of us as individuals, as families, as communities is not more pride, not more judgment, but more humility, more courage to admit when we are wrong, more patience to hear another's pain, more wisdom to know that sometimes peace is more valuable than being right. So I ask you, my brothers and sisters, the next time anger rises, meet it with humility. The next time pride urges you to speak in haste, pause. The next time fear tells you to build walls, choose instead to build bridges, because where humility leads, healing follows. My brothers and sisters, there is a truth about the human heart that many of us overlook. When we focus too much on ourselves, we grow smaller. When the voice inside demands attention, praise, and recognition above all else, it narrows our vision and shrinks our purpose. The ego loves to make us believe that we are the center of the universe, that everything must revolve around our wants, our pain, our victories. But in truth, the greatest healing comes when we step outside ourselves and turn our gaze toward others. Service, helping, giving, supporting is not a burden, it is a gift. It is the medicine that quiets the noise of ego and negative feelings. When we serve, when we place the needs of another before our own, we remind ourselves of a simple but powerful truth. We are not alone. Our value is not measured by how loudly we can shout or how many times our name is called. It is found in the quiet acts of kindness, the unseen sacrifices, the moments when we choose love over pride. I have learned that when ego demands to be fed, it never feels full. It is a hunger without end. But when we reach out to others, we find a deeper satisfaction, not the empty applause of the world, but the quiet joy of purpose. It is in service that the ego's hold begins to loosen and the heart expands. Think about the times you have helped someone, a stranger in need, a family member struggling, a friend lost in despair. How did it feel? Did the pain inside you lessen? Did your worries grow smaller? That is no accident. Serving others heals the wounds that ego and negativity create. It shifts the focus from me to we, from competition to compassion, from loneliness to connection. But service is not always grand gestures. It does not require a stage or a spotlight. It can be as simple as listening without judgment, offering a hand without expecting thanks, or speaking words of encouragement when silence would be easier. These small acts carry great power because they break the chains of selfishness that bind us. When we serve, we begin to see the world and ourselves more clearly. We realize that everyone carries their own burdens, their own fears, their own stories of pain and hope. And in recognizing this shared humanity, we find forgiveness, we find patience, we find peace. Let me tell you something important. The ego resists service because it fears losing control. It fears being vulnerable because to serve is to admit that we are part of something greater than ourselves. But it is in that admission that we discover true freedom. Service transforms negative feelings. When bitterness threatens to root itself in our hearts, service uproots it. When jealousy whispers lies of comparison and inadequacy, service silences it with gratitude. When anger burns, service cools it with acts of kindness. It is a powerful antidote to the poison of ego. And there is another gift in service. It teaches humility. When we serve, we remember that no one is above another. We learn to listen before we speak, to understand before we judge, to give without counting the cost. We become leaders not because we demand respect, but because we earn it through our actions. In serving others, we also serve ourselves. We build a life of meaning, not just moments of pleasure. We create connections that withstand trials. We leave behind a legacy not of pride, but of love. So I urge you find ways to serve, not for recognition, not for reward, but because in serving you will find healing. When negative feelings rise, let your response be to reach out, not retreat. Let your answer to ego's demand for importance be acts of generosity, because the path to peace is found not in feeding the self, but in feeding the soul of another. And in that we are made whole.